I did my presentation on animal captivity laws. Captivity is used as a generalizing term to describe the keeping of either domesticated animals or wild animals. The main ways that animals are held captive are for entertainment, and that circuses, zoos, aquariums, and aquatic shows like SeaWorld, or for private ownership. Some statistics on animals in captivity versus the wild. On average, elephants travel 25 kilometers per day, but when they are kept in the circus, they are chained up for the majority of the day, and they can only pace back and forth in the small area that they are confined to. Tigers, are held in small cages, and they're not allowed to hunt. Wild horses and ponies often socialize and roam, but in the circus they are kept away from each other in separate cages, and it discourages interaction. Orcas normally travel over 100 miles a day, but in SeaWorld they're held in shallow pools, they're not able to dive, and they just are forced to swim in circles. And then the lifespan of orca in captivity is 1/3 of that in the wild. Some more statistics. Circus animals spend 11 months out of the year traveling in boxcars and trains. And one example of this and how harshly they're treated is in 2004, there was a lion, his name was Clyde, and they were traveling in the Mojave Desert, and he died of heat stroke and dehydration because they're not given the adequate attention that they need in order to stay alive. And there was many cases in the early 2000s where tigers were found, 2 tigers were found held together in one boxcar. Elephants are forced to eat, sleep, and urinate in the same place for extended periods when they're traveling. And then just an example of physical changes in animals is that orcas in captivity, you can see that their dorsal fin is collapsed to one of the sides, and in the wild this only happens with serious injury or any environmental contaminations. With private ownership, the common wild animals are lions, tigers, cougars, wolves, bears, alligators, snakes, and non-human primates. And then there's more than 123 documented attacks on humans by captive large cats since the 90s. And not only does this put animals in danger and it doesn't allow them to live the life that they're supposed to, but it puts humans in danger as well. Just some laws regarding animal captivity. One of them is the Animal Welfare Act, and it regulates licensing, housing, exhibiting, transporting, and caring for captive wild animals. It was adopted by Congress to protect warm-blooded animals for commercial sale, research, transported commercially, or for public exhibits. It only provides minimal standards for care, and it doesn't restrict the display for private ownership. And it does not prohibit the use of bullhooks, electric shock, or other common training devices in the circuses. Bullhooks are just ways of basically torture to get the animals to listen. And then it requires all circuses to be licensed by the USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Services, but the problem with that is that the inspectors aren't adequately trained to recognize any signs of abuse or neglect in these animals, and it's not frequent enough. So there's not any adequate regulation for these animals. Another act is the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and it just protects marine mammals in the U.S. waters, but it still allows orcas to be captured for educational and entertainment purposes. And then the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. It prohibits the trade in living or dead wildlife for endangered species, and bans the import of certain species for commercial purposes, but it doesn't have any regulation over species that are not endangered. And then the Endangered Species Act just protects fish, mammals, birds, and plants that are listed as threatened or endangered in the U.S. But once again, there's nothing protecting any animals that aren't considered endangered. At the state level, some states require licensing, and some have bans on owning captive animals and private possession of large cats and wolves and bears. But there are no state laws prohibiting any specific species from taking part in a performance. Michigan prohibited the private possession of big cats, bears, and wolf hybrids, and Pasadena, California has banned animal acts in traveling shows and circuses, as well as Provincetown, Massachusetts, and Richmond, Missouri. Those were the first places to do anything about circuses in the U.S. and regarding animals in those shows. My opinion on this is that wild animals are not meant to spend their lives confined to a cage. It does put the owner or the trainer in danger, and you can't blame the animal for that. These animals are meant to be in the wild and hunt and spend their lives free, and you're expecting them to do these tasks that are nearly impossible, and you have to expect some kind of retaliation from these animals.